age, every color, every sister and mother and brother. Everybody's got a seat at the table. Everybody's welcome here. Making smiles every year. Everybody's welcome here. Come on, come on. Everybody's welcome here. Love is where we gather near. Everybody's welcome here. Come on, come on. One big family. One big family.
Good morning, AFT. How are we today? Woo! All right, I got a quick question for you. Over the past couple of days, I don't know about you, but I have felt re-empowered and I have felt emboldened. There have been so many calls to action. So my question to you is, do you feel re-empowered to leave here and go forward in what you're doing? Yes? All right. Then I have a quick request. I would love to take a selfie with other empowered and emboldened educators. So I'm going to try, see if it works. But if you feel like it and you want to join me, I'd love for you to stand up and give me your best empowered, emboldened pose. All right, I'll do this really quick. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Woo! All right. All right, thank y'all for humoring me. It is a privilege to be here and even more privilege to start this off. My name is Casey Wise. I'm the Senior Program Director for the National Indian Education Association, NIEA. Whoop, whoop. And on behalf of NIEA and our Executive Director, Jason Dropick, who could not be here today, I want to express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to be able to speak before you and for NIA's ongoing and enduring partnership with AFT. So as a former high school literature teacher, woo-woo, in the house, I am overjoyed, beyond overjoyed to be in the presence of so many phenomenal educators. I really mean it when I say thank you for your dedication to our students, especially as we face continued attacks on public education. And to me, teaching has always been an act of love. It was a privilege and a responsibility. But I know as of late, teaching has become an act of resistance and extreme advocacy. For nearly 60 years, NIA has advanced culturally relevant education opportunities for Native students. Our work weaves together a whole child approach and community engagement to ensure that Native students are surrounded by people who see them and value them and uplift them. Despite generations of federal assimilation policies, genocide, and forced removal, Native nations are still here. That's it. That's it. Our students are still here, and they're not just surviving, they are thriving. Today, there are 574 federally recognized tribes, 63 state-recognized tribes, and more than 175 Native nations still spoken today, Native languages still spoken today in the United States. Amen? We have more to reclaim. However, fewer than 1% of our nation's teachers identify as Native, while over 600,000 Native students attend K-12 schools. Over 93% of Native students attend public education. So that means that Native students are in your classrooms. Even if you know it or not, Native students are in your schools. And NIEA is here to support you in creating learning environments that are culturally rich, that are historically accurate, and identity affirming. Unfortunately, less than half of the U.S. states require teaching standards that acknowledge Native history past 1900. Let that sink in. So curricula that exclude or distort Native stories continue to cause harm, and they're in our classrooms. Education was once used as a tool to erase Native identity, and so for many students, it still can be. But education, as we know and we've heard over the past few days, it holds a power to heal and to restore. So 10 years ago, a brilliant Oglala Lakota educator and leader invited me into a space of unlearning and truth-telling. It's why I'm here today. As a white student and then a white teacher, my education path offered me very little understanding of Native nations or their contemporary realities and sovereignty. But with her guidance and her friendship and continual engagement with our Native communities, I confronted this erasure for myself and began to see how our classrooms can either silence or illuminate Native brilliance. So I want to leave you with an additional call to action. Learn the story of the land where you live and you teach. Thank you. Learn that story, learn that truth, and then teach it with truth. That's the emboldened part. Teach it with truth. Teach it with joy and with the belief that Native students deserve to be seen, not through an outdated, one-sided lens, but in their full brilliance and sovereignty. So NIEA invites you to stand with us for Native education for all students. Because when Native students and all students are empowered, everyone gains a fuller and a more honest and a more human education. And that strengthens every classroom, every community, and every future. So I appreciate the space to share with you today. And just remember one more call to action. All right, thank you.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Jarrell Hendon, and I am honored to stand here before you today as a school attendance officer. I work in Birmingham City Schools. I am a former science teacher of 15 years, and most importantly, I am a proud member, and I say this with pride, y'all. I'm a proud member of Birmingham AFT, Local 2115. You see, for me, AFT is so much more than just a union. It is a core part of my professional identity. When I look around this room, I see that all of y'all are my family. I mean that. We are united by a shared vision of the future of our profession. Now, as educators, we understand that to help our students, we must continuously learn. And when I looked in the room and I saw all y'all, I said, y'all represent what we need in our schools, people that want to learn and do the best for our students. I am proud to have been working with AFT for about 13 years as a professional trainer. And I have to say, in the role that I have, AFT, you guys developed me a lot. You all kept me connected to teachers by giving me modules such as the game factor, parent engagement, differentiating instruction, and students with challenges. And I'm sure each of you have a story about how the modules might have impacted your life. And what we need to do when we leave today, let's tell others about the professional experiences that we have gained this week so that others can come to Teach 2026 or whenever it's going to be. We want to fill up the room. See, I believe that AFT professional learning gives us the clarity that we need to engage diverse learners and their families, to create inclusive environments, and to adapt our teaching strategies to meet the unique needs of our students while challenging them to grow. And not just in our classroom, guys, but for the entire world that they're going to go for. See, as an attendance officer, every child that I encounter, they're not just skipping your classes because they don't want to be there. They have real barriers in place that we have to confront head on. And a lot of times the schools don't always have the resources. And it is my job to help break those barriers and help connect these families with resources in your communities and even help teachers in the classrooms to connect with those learners even stronger. So as I leave here today, I ask that we all continue to fight for safe and welcoming, relevant and engaging schools. And I want to say something real quickly for everybody to hear. We know what our learners need. And this may be the opportunity where we might have to encourage our colleagues. Look at your neighbors and let them know we know what our learners need. Let them know that, encourage them. Thank you. What we have to remember is that our future is counting on us. The future of this great nation is counting on teachers like you every single day, doing the work that you do. So don't get discouraged in this role. As we leave here today, let's continue to stand together. Let's continue to support one another and to ensure that the promise of a high-quality public education is never lost. And in case we ever forget it, let everybody in the world know that we are AFT proud. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage AFT Executive Vice President Evelyn DeJesus.
Good morning, AFT! Buenos dias a todos! Hey, listen, we're in the last stretch. So I know it's been a wonderful few days. Just hang in there. We're almost done. But I just wanted to tell you I'm so happy that you're here. And I just want to say, weren't Casey Wise and Gerald Hendon amazing? I don't know how they do it time after time. So let's give all of the AFT voices, storytellers we heard from throughout this conference, a big applause. Let's go. Thank you, thank you. And as you well know, this is our last session of Teach. And I hope you had as much fun and learned as much as I did. This conference was chock full of so many workshops and so much professional development. Are you with me? Yes. All right. But most important of all, I loved watching all of you connect with one another and share and support each other. As Randy said in her keynote, you truly are America's future makers. Thank you all for being here. That's right. Give yourself a round of applause. None of this could have happened without the most talented, amazing staff I have ever had the joy of working with. I'd like to thank Marla, please, as I name you, stand up. Marla Youssef Keishat, Emily Capello, Laura Brown, and the entire Ed Issues Department team. They are the brains behind this conference. Also, hats off to Joe Linton and the mailroom team, the meetings and travel department, they all got you here, and the management data and analytical department. And a huge thanks to the where's the communications department? Stand up. Communications department for making everything look and sound so amazing. And let's also give the hotel staff and the engineering team members of Unite Here, Local 25, and International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 99, a big round of applause too. You may know from past Teach conferences that at the send-off session, we try to provide you with a truly inspirational speaker outside the AFT, but one who shares our values and centers them in her own work. This morning, I'm excited. This morning, I am thrilled that I get to introduce you to the globally recognized filmmaker, human rights advocate, and education activist, Leslie Udwin. She is truly an amazing woman, and I feel lucky to hear her speak today. We had a little chat in the back. You're in for something so amazing. She's an amazing speaker, and what a great humanitarian. She is going to tell us her story in her own words, but let me give you a little taste of who she is. Leslie is an award-winning filmmaker who made the documentary India's Daughter about the notorious gang rape and murder of 23-year-old Jyoti Singh in Delhi in December of 2012. This assault sparked mass protests in India and eventually a global movement against violence towards women and girls. In Leslie's words, she states, "I was absolutely awestruck by the ordinary men and women of India who poured out onto the streets in response to this horrific gang rape and who demanded change for women's rights. And I thought the least that I can do was amplify their voices." Just a few years later, convinced that, in Nelson Mandela's words, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. Leslie founded Think Equal, a nonprofit education initiative that promotes social and emotional learning and equality in early education that now serves over 500,000 children in 36 countries across 5 continents. That's right. I'm especially glad to welcome Leslie this morning because at this moment in our country, we can't help but be worried about what's going on in our classrooms. Our teachers have been watching respected programs eliminated, scrubbed from websites, disappeared by an administration that wants to eliminate anything remotely connected to what they call DEI. And we call the reality of our classrooms and our mission. Here in the AFT, we believe in diversity. We believe in equity. We believe in inclusion. How could we not? Public education in this country just is fantastically diverse. Given that, are we supposed to treat one group within the racial tapestry differently than another? Are we supposed to enshrine inequality? Are we supposed to bring back the days when girls couldn't attend school? Women couldn't vote. Blacks, Latinos, and Asians were legally segregated. Jews and Catholics were restricted and faced quotas. And Native Americans were confined to reservations. And what would it mean to get rid of inclusion? Think about it. Who would go to school? I'll tell you, about 10% of the current school population. That's 1 in 10 of our current students. Think about that number. Listen, everyone. Randy said it more eloquently than I've ever heard it said in her opening keynote on Friday, when she talked about the centrality of safe, welcoming, relevant, and engaging schools. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel. I want to quote one of the paragraphs from that section of her speech. People simply cannot learn when they're experiencing hunger or high amounts of stress. Schools must be places where students, where families and educators are physically secure, supported, and accepted. We know that too many of our students today do not feel safe, whether because of loneliness, of anxiety and depression, gun violence, immigration status, or countless other reasons. How to address this challenge to make all of our schools safe, welcoming, relevant, and engaging is the single, listen to me, is the single biggest pedagogical issue on our plates today. Are you with me? So, Leslie Udwin is going to help us figure that out. So, without further ado, please welcome Leslie Udwin.
hello. You may have noticed I'm barefoot. Why? Because I'm walking on hallowed ground. Hallowed ground is where educators are gathered. I believe that with all of my heart. I would cross oceans to be amongst you, and I have. You are my role models. You are my heroes. And I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be here, and I'm deeply, profoundly grateful to my loved and cherished colleagues and friends now at the AFT, with whom my Think Equal NGO has partnered. You know, in the midst of the emergencies, the conflicts and crises that are unfolding in the whole world, everywhere we look, what we need and what we actually rely on is you. It is as simple as that. Only you, with the most important jobs that exist in the entire world, only you can build a new generation, a new mindset that will end violence, end selfishness and greed and discrimination and inequality. And you know, this DEI that Evelyn spoke of, that the old guard are hating and threatened by so much, well, truth to tell, I have come to understand after 10 years in this space, we're just going to have to wait for that old guard to DIE. And they surely will. But what will be left behind is what you, the educators, build. Education is the engine of progress. And I have to say that early childhood education, oh yes, that is the very engine room of progress. And the younger the grades that you teach, the more critical and vital you are, though every single one of you, wherever you are in the school journey, is vital and critical. Only you, with the concrete tools in your hands, those nurturing hands, with a fire in your belly to execute this nurturing framework that is needed so badly in our classrooms, in our settings. And with your duty of care to our children and your spirit, your love, your caring of children, which I know is in your hearts in abundance, because why on earth else would you ever have become educators? You're not here for the money, right? Do you know, I once learned across the ocean in England, and I was so shocked, it still lives with me, this fact, that a study was made and that the top 25 hedge fund managers in the United States, top 25, earned more than all the kindergarten teachers in America put together. Shame! Article 29 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is a seminal document which every nation state on earth has adopted, in principle at least, has ratified, but very sadly soon forgot about. That article states the following: education should be directed to the whole personality of the child. We have ignored this too long at our peril, and it is time now to commit to repurposing education, and we will do it whether they like it or not. Because no education is effective or complete or enough until and unless it includes social and emotional learning, building the character of the child, building their moral compass, building their values with empathy, critical thinking, emotion regulation, emotional literacy, self-esteem, peaceful conflict resolution, etc. In short, the very foundation of peace and peaceful relations in the world. That's why we see what we see in so many instances around our globe. As Aristotle said 2.5 millennia ago, education of the head without education of the heart is no education at all. And I learned this in a very unusual way. I used to be a filmmaker, as Evelyn mentioned. I was happy, I was successful. I won the British Oscar. I should have carried on doing that to the rest of my life, right? Well, what happened was that trajectory was interrupted because of this horrific, brutal gang rape of the young girl on the bus in India in 2012, 13 years ago now. And I went out to India, oddly enough, not because of the darkness of that event and the brutality of it, but more because I fell in love with the protesters who streamed onto India's streets, men and women, demanding an end to violence against women. And I thought, naively I'm afraid now, but I then thought, this is the beginning of the end of violence against women, and I need to go and lend my energies and my skills, such as they are, to documenting this. In fact, I have learned, no protest will ever do it. No movement will ever do it. The Me Too movement, which started up after this movement, that sparked all of this worldwide awareness and protest, has had a lot of good things that it's brought about. It's also brought about a lot of bad things, I have to say, because if we believe in us being judged by a panel of our peers, well, that's what needs to happen. We can't make exceptions. So it's a very complex movement, that one. But has it changed anything? No. The rape and domestic abuse and all of those statistics are the same. 1 in 3 the world over, every single country, whether so-called developed country, I don't believe there's a single thing in the world that is a developed country, or the so-called developing nations. Because it's only mindset change that can achieve the real change. And if we don't recognize that, we're whistling in the wind, really. So, I went to India, and what did I think I was doing? When I got there, I was full of jargon, I'm going to amplify the voices of the protesters. Sounded good. What did it mean? It meant nothing. Because I knew that if all I managed to do here is create another awareness-building film, what was the good of that? Have we not got enough awareness about gender-based and other violence in our world? Of course we have. So what was the point of my sitting there for 2.5 years, as I did, making a film that would lead to awareness? And then I became obsessed by an idea. Thank heavens I became obsessed by this, some people thought, crazy idea. It's the best thing I ever did in my life. The darkest journey I've ever been on turned into a luminous journey that made me completely understand why we're in the position we're in and what we must do about it. I decided that the only purpose in making this film and staying on, away from my young children, my husband, would be if I could get permission from the Director General of Tihar Jail, the maximum security prison in Delhi, where these 6 rapists and murderers were incarcerated. And I got permission. I went into those prison cells and I interviewed them and other rapists and perpetrators of violence for 31 hours over many months. And let me tell you, it turned my whole world upside down. I expected to be confronted with monsters and psychopaths. I wish I could tell you I was. It would be so reassuring for us all. But I'm sorry to tell you, not one of the men I interviewed, not even the one who raped a 5-year-old girl, not one of them was a psychopath or a monster. Shocking, isn't it? 2 of them were very sensitive. All of them were polite. So how could they do what they did, which was so utterly brutal? Because they were programmed. They were programmed like robots. They didn't feel any remorse. They didn't even feel regret. They genuinely didn't believe they had done wrong. Imagine. Why? Because this girl was out at night after dark. And they said in India, no good girl is out at night after dark. She was with a man who wasn't her father, her brother, her husband. She was a slut. And they said, word for word, she not only deserved what she got, we had a duty to teach her a lesson. Imagine algorithms put into their brains that made them believe all of this. I, who was absolutely certain that I was in grave danger in those interviews because I'm one of the statistics, I was raped at 18. It happened to be in South Africa. It could have been anywhere in the world. 1 in 5 of us women have either been raped or have had attempted rape. And I was so frightened that when I sat in front of these rapists and murderers, I would, for the first time in my life, leap up out of my chair and throttle one of them or slap another, and I've never lifted a fist. I'm passionate, but I'm very peaceful. And I was so terrified of this that I actually asked for permission, and it sounds weird, but it's the only thing I could think of doing. I asked for permission to practice on other rapists who I didn't need for my film, to test my own mettle. And the first one I was given to practice on was this guy of 29 who had raped the 5-year-old. Now, when it came to the end of that 3-hour interview, and I said, bizarrely, without even anger, I didn't feel angry. How can you be angry with a robot who has been programmed to be who he is and do what he does? You see, we are very good at distancing ourselves, aren't we? And saying, oh, nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with us, these monsters, these psychopaths. The truth, the uncomfortable truth which we have to acknowledge in order to make a change, is that they are everything to do with us. Because society, what we call culture, be it patriarchal culture in America, or in England, or in India, or be it the culture of caste, or the culture of superiority of certain colors to other colors. I mean, whatever the culture is, we have taught them to think that way. And if you teach people how to think, you're actually teaching them how to act. That is what I discovered in those prison cells. And when it came to the third hour of my interview with Gaurav, the guy who had raped the 5-year-old, and I said, without anger, I said, Gaurav, please, please help me. Help me to understand. Because I know if we don't understand these perpetrators, how on earth are we going to change them, right? I said, help me to understand what went on in your mind as you were standing there looking at this tiny little... I couldn't even finish my sentence. And he interrupts, and believe me, he was not the sharpest knife in the box, okay? And he looks at me like I'm a total idiot, with complete disdain on his face. What is this pathetic idiot woman asking me? With that tone, he goes, she was a beggar girl. Her life was of no value. With a smile on his face. He also didn't think he had done wrong because of the caste system in India. And this isn't an Indian phenomenon. This is true of every country in the world. These socio-cultural mores dictate violence. And what I discovered in those cells is that the violence is not the disease. We keep treating it as if it is. So we keep on being reactive to the violence, building more homes for battered women. We're normalizing it, actually. More room at the inn. More men can do that, by the way, because we've just built another center. The violence is the symptom of the disease. The disease itself is the discriminatory mindset that accords lesser or no value to another human being. That is the disease. And the whole spotlight for me fell on education in an extraordinary way. You see, I'm looking at all these men and I'm starting to analyze the common threads between them. And I'm thinking, lack of education. Only one of the rapists and murderers I'd interviewed had finished secondary school. So I leap to the conclusion, which I now know to have been a thoroughly lazy conclusion, that the lack of education has somehow informed the brutality. And then I have a major problem on my hands. Because the next set of interviewees for my film are the lawyers in the case. And let me tell you, the lawyers on all sides were at least as, if not more, discriminatory than the rapists. They too said, well, she should never have been out at night. She was asking for it, they said. One lawyer actually said, if that girl on the bus, she was raped on a bus, if she had been my daughter, and this is a word for word what he said to me, I would take her home to my farmhouse, and in front of my whole family, I would pour petrol on her and burn her alive. A lawyer. Lawyers who have had the highest possible degree of access to education, in inverted commas. And that is when I realized that's not the type of education that is fit for purpose in terms of what we need to do. So I start researching, when was the education system designed? By who? For what purpose? It was designed, my dear friends, in and for the Industrial Revolution, more than 250 years ago. And its purpose? To fill factories. And that same purpose informs the broken system of education that we peddle to our children around the world, which focuses on numeracy and literacy and testing. It's that same system that is simply not fit for purpose in terms of what I'm talking about. And if what I'm talking about is not important, I know every single one of you know it is, but if it weren't, well, then we're just not going to survive to see that other system peter out and die out. So, we believe there is a missing subject. And I don't mean there are no curricula stating that subject or describing it. But you know, curriculum and framework can only be intentional. It's theoretic. It's academic. What the educators who have all of the magic power in the world to affect the change need is resources in their hands, the tools at the coalface in the classroom to achieve this sacred mission. So Think Equal is a global movement, and it's for system change. And you know, if we don't do this at scale, if we don't achieve system change, we fail. It's as simple as that. So having the kind of allies that you are and potentially are is for me the most important thing in my entire life of anything that I think, love, live and breathe. Mandela, one of the brightest minds that ever walked our earth, Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon we have to change the world." And, you know, that kept falling on my mind like a mantra as I sat in those prison cells. And I thought, this isn't possible. He cannot possibly have been referring to the kind of education those lawyers had. That's not the education that changes the world. So then, what was his definition of education? And I went online and I Googled Nelson Mandela, education, and up it came within seconds. It's one of the most famous things he said. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, religion, gender, or any other background. A child has to be taught to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can learn to love. It is as simple as that. And that is when Think Equal, for me, was born. The fireworks went off and I thought, okay, no more films. No more creating awareness, which is de trop, and there is too much of anyway, without action. From now on, every breath I take will be to serve the teaching of our children to love. Now, confession. What did I know? And it's not even a confession, it's just stating a fact. What did I know about education? I was a filmmaker. So I started researching, but I was certainly determined that I would bring the world's experts around me. People like Sir Ken Robinson from the field of education, Dr. Mark Brackett, Dr. Robin Stern from psychology, the Yale University Center for Emotional Intelligence, from neuroscience, Professor Richard Davidson, one of the greatest neuroscientists in the world, here in Wisconsin-Madison, and from the world of human rights and social justice, people like Sheila Wamahiu from Kenya, who's an expert at value-based education, Dr. Urvashi Sani from India, who is an expert at empowering girls through education and breaking toxic, limiting male stereotypes. And it was they, the experts themselves, who so generously joined this movement and gave of their time. Sir Ken wrote one of our books for the kids. They scaffolded the lesson plans. They contributed to them. Barbara Isaacs, bottom left there, president of Montessori Europe, actually drafted many of these lesson plans. Amazing people who really gave generously of their time, because without them, I couldn't have done it. What I learned pretty quickly was about the window of opportunity, and this is so serious. I beg you, if you hear nothing else today from me, please take this home with you. It is very clear in neuroscience. This isn't an opinion. This is fact. Just as an architect would never think of building a building without a foundation because it'll fall down in a number of years, so in education, do we have one narrow window of opportunity to build the foundation in a way that everything becomes, for that child, reflexive. It's their reflex to be kind. It's their reflex to be empathetic. If we co-create with our children pro-social neuro pathways in their brain, that is the foundation for the rest of their lives. The first 5 years have everything to do with how the next 80 turn out. Now, I don't mean to be bleak or pessimistic. I'm not saying you can't change children and youth after the age of 6. Of course you can. But you better not ignore 3 to 6, because you can't put a foundation in later on. You can't put the foundation in after you've started building the skyscraper. So you've got to do all of it, but you've got to start with the foundation. This is one of many graphs. I'm just pointing out here, there are 2 trajectories. Emotion control, which you're seeing there in red, and habitual ways of responding. Actually, one of them is red, one is yellow, but you see those 2 lines on the graph. See how they start flatlining at 6? There have been decades of neuroscientists around the world studying the brain. This graph happens to come from the Harvard Center of the Developing Child. There are many. Here is another depiction of the importance of early years learning, 3 to 6. At birth, look how sparse the neuropathways are. By age 6, look how dense. And look at them at age 14. Neuroscience is fact. And we really need to take that incredibly seriously. So, what is Think Equal? Now, obviously, as I stand here, I'm going to be talking about Think Equal because that is what I know best. It's what I serve 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? You will know of other programs, and I'm not here to be, exclusive or elitist and to say, oh, it's only Think Equal. There must be others. And I know there are some for early years, hardly any, but there are a few. I've come across them. But what is important, I think, and that's why I'm using Think Equal as the example to show you what is needed, I believe. Emotional intelligence is not the same as social and emotional learning. It's a part. But what about the social part? We speak of social and emotional learning with the accent on emotional, as though all we need is emotional literacy and emotion regulation, the 2 legs of emotional intelligence. But it's not enough. What about gender equality? Who's teaching that to our children? What about racial equality? What about celebrating diversity, empathy, self-esteem? And we will come in a moment to the 25 competencies and skills that we teach our children in this program on 3 levels between the ages of 3 and 6. Because we have to serve the whole personality of the child. And as Randy said and Evelyn reported, an anxious child learns nothing. An anxious child whose anxiety has not been dealt with in early childhood is 20 times more likely than cigarette smokers to get cardiovascular disease in later life. Even if one were looking at this through the lens of those who care more about money than human beings, and God knows those abound in this world we live in. But even if we were looking at it from that lens, look at the insane waste of public finance. In England, the country I come from, where the Department of Education is probably the worst in the world, they don't even think early childhood matters a jot. They've just started a review of the curriculum. They started at the age of 6, the idiots, as though swerving to avoid the very window of opportunity we have. They don't read the science. They think early years is about babysitting, is about children playing, full stop. They even say, we only believe in guided teaching in the early years when a child shows an interest in the subject. Oh, really? Miss, can you please teach me about toxic masculinity? At the age of 3 or 4 or 5. Honestly, get a grip. So, we have to take care of the well-being and the mental health of our children, particularly post-COVID. We've seen what has happened due to those school closures. And I'm not even blaming for the school closures, because it was a new situation. Nobody really knew what to do. And they did the wrong thing. Okay, they tried. But we have got a terrible legacy from that. We need to attend to it as urgently as it is possible, because our children have missed out on vital developmental milestones, and that is going to affect the rest of their lives. But in England, just to go back a thought, 2 years ago, mental health disorders cost the country £121 billion. To put this Think Equal programme in every single reception classroom, which is the equivalent of pre-K here, for every 4-year-old in the whole of England, would cost the same as paying the incarceration costs for 1 year of a prison cell for 10 violent offenders. Come on! You know, get your brains active, I say to the English Department of Education. And all of that wasted social cost could be used to pay teachers more, to build hospitals and infrastructure. We could become a pro-social, proud society, country, world. So we also, of course, as you know by now, focus on psychosocial competencies like self-esteem and self-awareness and social justice. Critically important. Environmental stewardship. I mean, we want a sustainable planet, do we? We better teach our children about environmental stewardship and stop being so insane as to ignore the threat of it, which is now staring us in the face to a degree that is just completely obvious. We have best practice within our curriculum because we honor all of those thought leaders, those brilliant minds who have created the materials. The kindness curriculum, authored by Professor Richard Davidson, neuroscientist, and the Dalai Lama. You don't get a better focus and mindfulness and learning how to learn curriculum than that authored by the Dalai Lama. I promise you. The Ruler program, which many of you will know, a brilliant best practice program from Yale, which has two legs, emotional literacy and emotion regulation, and the C-Learning curriculum, which is trauma-informed and helps deal with psychosocial support. Those are the three we found and incorporated into the program. Now, the 25 competencies and skills that I spoke of earlier are in this heart, and I've already mentioned many of them, and I often run out of time, don't I, Giselle? How am I doing? How long have I got? So I'm not going to go through them. They're on the website. They are, easily obtained. This is quite important. How did we design this program? We started by going to all of those 60 years' worth, mostly American, longitudinal tests, those RCTs and evaluations that have studied longitudinally what happens when children learn social and emotional learning in their early years for a year. And we modeled the program on what led to impact. So in those studies, we found that it being a one-a-week lesson or an out-of-school was no good. The way neuropathways are built in the brain is by repetition. And it was very important to get this right. This is a vaccination against violence, discrimination, antisocial behavior, and attitudes. And so with any vaccination, you can't just guess, oh, we'll put a bit of this in, a bit of that in, and a bit of, what was it, bleach? Right? And, oh, we'll just, we'll give it occasionally, or they can take it as much as they want. No. It is scientific. And we found that it needed twice a week, half-hour dosage, twice a week. So we made it 3 times a week to be absolutely sure that we will get the transformation. And it works. The transformation here comes after 4 months of the year-long program. So it is not only achievable, it shines when you see a child who came in at the beginning of the year for good reason or justifiable or understandable reason with the most violent behaviors, and within 4 months is taking care of everybody in the class and making sure they're emotionally okay and building healthy relationships. That is a pretty astonishing thing, to find how easy it is to do this. It's not rocket science. It's neuroscience. So, 3 lessons a week, 30 minutes each, 3 levels, because, of course, you can't teach the same to 3-year-olds as to 5-year-olds, so each level is age-appropriate. We also have a 4th level, which we are now rolling out in all of Ukraine, every single kindergarten in Ukraine, and we've just started with 600 classrooms in Palestine. In the West Bank, we're moving now to 7,800 classrooms, kindergarten to grade 4. And that is trauma-informed. That's all about helping our children with trauma. So it's a level 4, and it's not that age restrictive. It's 3 to 12, actually. And we have a 4.5 kilogram pack, which every classroom, every group gets. These are resources for teachers. They are the tools in the teacher's hands that operationalize the curriculum. Because even if we can, and I know that in this country, you are all trained, you're experts, and maybe the curriculum framework here means more to you because of that expertise that you have. But even then, I beg you to consider How can we give these children what is their inalienable right, the right to grow up and not rape, the right to grow up and not commit suicide? How can we give our children that right, that is their birthright, in an even-handed manner, if every teacher is left to decide by themselves, oh, what resources will I use, how will I do this, even if you are doing it well? How can we be sure that in the next school along it's being done as well? So we have to systematize it if we're serious about it. I'm going to skip through some of this because it's, I'm sure I'm taking up too much time. But there are 3 ingredients, and this I think is actually very important. Narrative picture books are critical at this early age. And the biggest prize of these narrative picture books is, of course, that they are the best vehicle imaginable for empathy. You can't just wag a finger at a child, or an adult, or anyone for that matter, and say, put yourself in that person's shoes. That's meaningless. It's a vain exercise. It's theoretical. It's cognitive, procedural only. You need to grab that child's heart, engage it in a story with characters, and squeeze their little hearts. And that is how they become and experience empathy and become empathetic and grow the neural pathways that will keep them empathetic for the rest of their lives. There you have, by the way, a little boy in Zimbabwe teaching the class the ruler program's mood meter. They're so adept at it, it's mind-blowing. And there's one more ingredient that I think is very important with social-emotional learning, and that is we do have to, or should, engage the parents. Now, the transformation happens in that classroom. If we were only doing this through parents, forget about it. We'd go nowhere. Some parents are very enlightened. Most parents, I'm sorry to say, have discrimination of one kind or another so deeply embedded in their hearts that all they can do is pass that down cyclically and generationally, and it's not even their fault, because they are programmed to do so. So until we break that paradigm, until we break that pattern, we have to have the educators do this sacred and important work. There have been studies that have shown that engagement by parents do accelerate this social-emotional learning efficacy by 4 months. So we send home through the teachers at the beginning of each week. Each week has a book, and that book is unpacked in 3 lessons each week. And at the beginning of the week, we send home to the parents 5 10-minute activities rooted in the same week's learning to engage them. And of course, there's plenty to motivate them, even if they're not minded to approve of social-emotional learning. We call it well-being. That's what it is. It's well-being, right? And we motivate them by saying, which is the truth, children who learn this program or programs like it that teach well-being to our little ones, who learn that in early childhood, it's been proven they get up to 25% higher incomes. Do I care? Not a jot. That's not what's important in life. But there are parents who care. So give them what they want. It's important to them. It's a fact. 17% higher academic achievement. I do care about that, and so do they. So there are ways of involving them, but there is this triangular, holistic approach, and I think that's really good. We know this works. Why? Because apart from the 60-plus years of longitudinal studies I mentioned earlier, We have done 3 randomized controlled trials, which are the gold standard of evaluation, in 3 very disparate countries: Botswana, Colombia, Australia. Identical results, with only 1 year of this learning. Anger and aggression, way down. Anxiety, withdrawal, emotion dysregulation, way down. Pro-social behaviors, empathy, regulation of emotion, way up. And the teacher's well-being was massively increased. How important is that? Because it's, as I said earlier, if it's you we rely on, we need you taken care of, for heaven's sake. Without you, we don't even have a chance. Okay, we're leaving all of this stuff out. I've spoken about the importance of narrative, positive. These are all the things. I'm just rushing through them so you just get an idea of what we have over the last 10 years discovered is critical to teach our children with social and emotional learning programs. Okay, skipping through all of this. Behavior as communication, we know all about that. The Ruler program, C-Learning, brilliant programs. We map the curriculum in every country we go to. We have an offer in New York City. Any pre-K teacher in New York City can get, courtesy of the AFT and Think Equal, this program for free. So if you know of any, a QR code will come up at the end, and I'll ask you to please scan it. So we map the curriculum. We've mapped it across the 7 areas of learning and development. Every country, we've mapped it across the creative curriculum. I'm not being very good at this. Here, we've mapped it across the creative curriculum. It goes on and on. This is just an example. And it always fits like a glove. These are the tools that operationalize the intentional curriculum. Lists of objectives, and outputs are as nothing if you don't have the tools to express them. Now, this next slide, I am so proud to be able to tell you, I am so optimistic. I'm so full of hope. And one of the biggest problems we have, actually, in this world is that we've lost hope, haven't we? We're despairing. We look around us. We look now at a war that has reached the nadir, the very, very bottom of humaneness and humanity. Seeing starving children, babes in arms being shot up, and everyone stands by and thinks, what can I do about this? There's nothing I can do. And to a degree, they're right. There's nothing we can do to influence that situation because monsters are in charge. But what we can do is turn that acronym into DIE and wait for that to happen. It's going to happen, right? So we build the next generation starting now, because what we never have done, to our great cost, is prevent. It's idiotic of us not to prevent on every level, economic, social, in terms of building cohesive, peaceful communities. We have to start preventing as soon as possible. And this, for me, is the most optimistic slide of the whole lot. After 8 years since we started our first program in 2017 in 5 countries, we are now in 38 countries, 582,000 children per year. We only measure the first year, because we're not yet totally on top of sustainability checks. That's another whole thing we're just starting on now. But for the last 8 years, we've been so hungry for change. We've been motoring forward and not looking back as much as we ideally should have done. But there are limited teams and resources, of course. But in those 38 countries, 12 of them, the ones in yellow, have committed to making this social emotional learning program of Think Equal compulsory for every child in their country. That is amazing, because those countries will totally transform. They have started preventing. That is system change. Now, there is a short video to nearly end with. Am I allowed 5 extra minutes? Because otherwise I skip the video. Giselle, Marla, anybody give me permission? Or it's okay if I can't. We'll skip the video. Okay. I'll tell you, the video was Meryl Streep, who's advocating for this program, and she's one of our patrons. What an amazing human being. We'll put it on AFT.org. Brilliant. Look, there was a QR code there, but we're running short of time, and I am ending now. But please, just ask your AFT rep. We're in partnership with them. If you know of anybody who wants this gift, contact us. It is so important that we group together and do this work and join formidable forces. So look, H.G. Wells, a wonderful novelist, said, civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And I think there's never been a time in life where that statement rings true with as much laser-sharp precision. The question that we need to ask, and have asked in the last 50 minutes, whichever part of the education system we serve, the question we need to urgently ask and answer is, what kind of education? What kind of education can prevent this catastrophe? And it is only social and emotional learning for well-being, psychosocial support, and social justice. And we need to commit to serving this with all of our hearts for the sake of ensuring the sustainability, the very survival of our human family and our home, the earth. The general question that I ask policymakers, presidents when I can get my hands on them, and I do, I say, you take seriously, I know, even though I don't always know. You take seriously, I'm sure, I know, your duty of care to our youngest, our most vulnerable citizens, our children. So how on earth can you mandate numeracy, mandate literacy, and leave it as optional for our children to learn how to value another human being? Optional or non-existent to learn how to lead healthy relationships. This can't be optional. This is not only idiocy, this is madness. It has to become a core, front and center, compulsory part of education, repurposed. There's an American historian, I want to end on this. He's from the late 19th century, and he wrote an autobiography called The Education of Henry Adams. His name was Henry Adams. He was related to not one, but 2 American presidents at a time when there was no deep sense of shame in being so related. And he made a beautiful statement about educators, which I want to end with. Teachers, You affect eternity. No one knows where your influence will end. It is you who hold our collective futures in your hands. You are the architects of the next generation. You are the source of all hope and all optimism. I celebrate and I salute you. Thank you.
My friends, members of my union family, what a few days we had here at Teach. We're almost done. We're almost done. You've been among the people in the world who best understands what your lives are like. You showed up. As we say in Spanish, you were presente. You showed up eager for professional development, eager for the camaraderie of your fellow educators. We see you, AFT members, and we know that you give to your students day in and day out, whether or not you have gas in your tank. I hope you can look around and see the people you've shared the last few days with and say, thank you, I'm glad I came. In fact, turn around to the person next to you and say, I'm glad I came. Because my union family, the road ahead is not going to be easy. Listen to me. The road ahead is not going to be easy. We know that. The road ahead is not going to be straight. We know that too. But it's going to be a righteous road. A road we'll walk hand in hand, juntos, together. On that road, we'll learn from each other. On that road, we'll rely on each other. Because you are leaving here today inspired, equipped, and empowered to make a better life for our members, for our students, and their families, and our communities. Because on that road, you'll be accompanied by 3,600 locals and the 1.8 million members of the AFT, one of the most powerful unions in this great country. If you've been inspired, stand up. If you've been equipped, stand up. If you've been empowered, stand up. We'll leave this hall ready to march. Let's start marching. Leaving this hall ready to march. Keep marching. Keep marching. Keep marching because the road is in front and we're gonna walk it together, learn together, stay safe together, and we love you because we are AFT. Who are we? Who are we?
Enjoying in the chorus of centuries, chanting together.
God bless you. Stay safe.
Path will be twisted.
Thank you.